The day he saw the two pink lines on a pregnancy test in the bathroom trash. Ethan Hayes drove, through a torrential downpour, to Victoria's favorite members-only club in Soho. At the door to her private suite, he ran a hand through his soaked hair, ready to tell her she couldn't drink if she was pregnant. But through the slightly ajar door, a woman's voice, laced with laughter, drifted out. "Tori, your wedding to Ethan is just a week away. Got that little surprise all planned out." "All set," Victoria's cool voice, softened by alcohol, replied. "I'm going to give him a memory that will last a lifetime." Ethan's hand froze in his hair, a sweet, unconscious smile spreading across his lips. In their 3 years together, she had been the definition of attentive, loyal, and loving. "Huh, sis, if Ethan ever found out I was the one pretending to be you in bed with him all this time, do you think he'd have a complete breakdown?" "Oh, I'm sure he'd never guess in a million years that his darling Victoria has an identical twin sister. He's always been so Mr. High and mighty, right? Can you imagine the look on his face when he finds out he's been a plaything for his girlfriend's sister for 3 years? The women's malicious laughter rooted Ethan to the spot, the color draining from his face. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He took an involuntary step forward, peering into the suite. And there she was. Sitting next to Victoria was a woman who was her exact copy. From her face to her hairstyle, even the tiny beauty mark at the corner of her eye was identical. That woman let out a cynical laugh, leaning back lazily against the sofa. "Well, you shouldn't have messed with Landon. Landon is the love of my sister's life. To punish Ethan, to send him crashing down to hell at his happiest moment. My sister has worked very hard." The other women in the room, the same ones who always greeted Ethan so warmly as their future brother-in-law, now chimed in with teasing jabs. "Ronnie, you're the one who's been working hard. All that grunt work for years. If he goes crazy after the wedding, maybe we can get a turn with him first." Tori is some kind of saint, coming up with a plan like this for Landon Sterling, playing along for 3 years, and saving herself for him the whole time. Victoria, Veronica, Landon. Ethan's head was ringing. The blood in his veins felt like it had turned to ice. He couldn't breathe. His body trembled uncontrollably, his wide eyes shimmering with a film of water, turning a painful, bloodshot red. The love story he thought was his salvation was nothing but a scam. A trap set for him, all for the sake of his old bully, Landon Sterling. How many times had he woken up from nightmares of Landon, only to have Victoria hold him tight and tell him not to be afraid? How many times had he spoken of the bullying, and she had been the one to comfort him, to take him to a therapist? Ethan couldn't believe it. He refused to believe it. He didn't understand. All those moments of love felt so real. How could they have been fake? The voices from his suite continued. "Landon's flying back home soon. Tori, you can finally stop living out of a suitcase. Weren't you tired of flying to see him every week? Tell me about it, sis. After 3 years of role-playing, I can finally be myself again. Every time my sister flew out of the country, I was the one left to coddle Ethan. Hey, Tori, Ronnie, your voices aren't exactly the same. Did he really never notice?" Veronica snorted. "That idiot? I just lower my voice a bit, tell him I had a sore throat. He'd fuss over me, wake up before dawn to make me honey lemon tea." Another round of roaring laughter. Victoria suddenly cut in. "That's enough. After the wedding, I'll give him a generous settlement. Enough for him to live comfortably for the rest of his life." "What's this, Tori? Don't tell me you're actually starting to feel sorry for him." A shiver went down Ethan's spine. He held his breath, his eyes fixed on that elegant woman. After 2 seconds, Victoria scoffed. "As if. What about you, Ronnie? You slept with him for 3 years. You didn't catch feelings, did you?" Victoria turned to look at Veronica. Her sister shook her head vehemently. 3 years? I got sick of him ages ago. Sis, you want to turn for the last week?" Victoria's laugh was cold. "He's dirty." She paused. "Look, this wedding was his idea. He begged me. The money is just to make sure he doesn't cling to me afterward. It's a bit of a rush, but help me get everything ready. In 1 week, right after I reveal the truth, I'm going to propose to Landon in my wedding dress." ####. Ethan didn't know how he left the club. Fat raindrops pelted his body, but he felt nothing, only the conversation from the suite echoing relentlessly in his mind. Landon Sterling, just hearing the name, made his entire body tremble uncontrollably. He didn't understand. Landon had moved abroad years ago. Why couldn't he just let him go? Why was he so obsessed with utterly destroying him? It had started with something as stupid as a campus poll. A candid photo of Ethan had won out over Landon's professionally shot entry for Campus King. In response, Landon and his cronies had cornered him in a bathroom, tortured him with every means they could think of, and then shoved his head into a toilet. Because he refused to kneel and apologize, The next 3 years of his life became a living hell. Beatings, being pricked with needles, thumbtacks left in his shoes, turning the entire class against him, sabotaging his part-time jobs, spreading vicious rumors. Landon even arranged for a string of wealthy older women to pursue him. Ethan had overheard the plan once, to let him be corrupted by money and then discard him like trash. Landon never succeeded, not even when he finally left to study abroad during their junior year. But by then, Ethan was already suffering from severe depression and had started self-harming. That's when Victoria had appeared. She wasn't like the other rich girls who pursued him, who looked at him like he was a piece of meat and threw credit cards at him. Her gaze was clear and direct. She took the time to understand his struggles, to listen to his needs. When she learned his grandmother needed long-term medication, she didn't look down on him. Instead, she found ways to improve his life within the bounds of what he could accept. She helped him find internships and part-time gigs. When he was working 2 jobs, she would sit with him in a 7-Eleven between shifts, eating a late dinner, leaning against him and holding him tight. "Ethan, you work so hard. You're amazing." Once, when his grandmother got sick while he was out of town, it was Victoria who rushed her to the hospital and stayed by her side for a day and night. When he got back the next day, she was exhausted but smiled and reassured him, "Your grandmother's fine, don't worry. Just don't wear yourself out." A voice in his head had told him then, "This is her. Try to trust her. Whatever the outcome, just cherish this moment." And she had been good to him, consistently. She'd even fought with her family, staging a brave rebellion to be with him. Veronica's mocking laughter echoed in his mind again. So stupid. As if the Devereaux family would ever let their precious daughter marry some poor nobody. It was just a couple of actors playing her parents. My sister pretends to fight for him, and he's moved to tears, completely devoted. So stupid, not noticing anything for 3 years. So stupid, still thinking Tori is head over heels for him. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Ethan collapsed in the rain, tears and rainwater streaming down his face. So stupid. Ethan, you really are. So stupid. He threw his head back and let out a manic laugh, letting the torrential downpour hammer his face. His phone rang, a jarring interruption. It was his grandmother's home care nurse. "Ethan, you need to come quick. Your grandmother. She's fading fast." A roar filled Ethan's ears. His mind went blank, his limbs weak. He scrambled up from the pavement on pure instinct, rushing to the curb to flag down a cab. But every car just flashed its lights and blared its horn, speeding past. Just as he was about to start running to the hospital, a Range Rover pulled over. The female driver asked where he was going. By the time he arrived, the doctor was already delivering the grim news. "Respiratory failure. There's nothing more we can do. You should just be with her." Ethan's knees gave out, and he knelt on the floor, his trembling hands taking his grandmother's. She forced a weak smile. "Ethan, don't cry. I'm sorry, sweetie. I couldn't hold on for your wedding." He shook his head violently, unable to speak past the choked sobs. Her eyes searched the room with great effort. "Where's Victoria? I'd like to see her." "Okay." Ethan's voice was a raw, barely audible whisper. He pulled out his phone and dialed Victoria's number again and again. Each call was declined. He started typing frantic messages. "Tori, Grandma's in heart failure. She doesn't have much time. Please come to the hospital. She wants to see you one last time. Tori, she's waiting for you. Just for a minute. Can you please come? Victoria, I'm begging you." His trembling hands flew across the screen, hot tears splashing onto his phone. In that moment, the lies and deception didn't matter. If Victoria would just come, if his grandmother could pass peacefully, nothing else mattered. But there was only silence from her. Ethan stopped. He forced a grotesque smile onto his face and squeezed his grandmother's hand, trying to comfort her. "Grandma, Tori must be tied up with something. Don't you worry, we're doing great. The wedding's next week. Grandma, I'm going to be so happy. Please rest easy." The hand in his tightened its grip. She stared at him intently. "Ethan, you have to live well. Be happy." Her hand went limp. Her last look was one of deep worry. Ethan stared blankly at his own hand, then collapsed to the floor, his cries tearing through the quiet hospital room. That night, he numbly went through the motions of handling his grandmother's affairs. He never got a reply from Victoria. In a quiet moment, he took Landon Sterling's contact out of his blocked list and clicked on his Instagram profile. The latest post read, "Was planning on flying home early for a surprise, but I'm the one who got surprised." The photo was taken at an airport. Victoria was in a giant mascot costume, holding a bouquet of flowers, her sweaty face peeking out, a gentle, loving smile on her lips. Another photo showed the two of them together, Landon beaming, Victoria looking at him with an expression of utter devotion. Ethan let out a bitter laugh and locked his phone. The next afternoon, holding his grandmother's urn, he returned to the hospital and submitted an application for Doctors Without Borders. The department head looked at him, surprised. "Aren't you getting married?" Ethan was silent for a moment. "Not anymore. Sir, I need to leave. The sooner, the better." Seeing his bloodshot eyes and desperate urgency, the chief didn't press. "You just made the application deadline. I'll give you a few days off to prepare. You leave with the group in 1 week." "Okay, 1 week." The day of his wedding to Victoria. He would not only be leaving that day, but he'd also be sending them a gift. A memory that would last a lifetime. ####. Considering the dangerous place he was heading, Ethan decided to bury his grandmother's ashes. He bought a small locket pendant and placed a lock of her hair and a small amount of ash inside, interring the rest in a cemetery plot. He knelt before the headstone, clutching the pendant at his chest. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'm about to go do something I've always wanted to do. I'll take care of myself." It was evening when Ethan returned to the villa. The moment he stepped inside, he heard cheerful laughter. He froze, but Victoria had already spotted him. She hurried over and pulled him inside. "Come on, there are a couple of friends I want you to meet." A man and a woman on the sofa stood up and turned to look at him, their eyes glinting with amusement. It was Landon Sterling and Veronica Devereaux. An uncontrollable tremor ran through Ethan's body, a physiological reaction he always had around Landon. Victoria's voice was bright with a smile. "Landon is a dear friend I grew up with, and this is Veronica, my twin sister. This got back from studying abroad, just in time for our wedding." Landon waved at him, a brilliant smile on his face. "Ethan and I know each other. We were roommates in college." With that, he came over and linked his arm through Ethan's, whispering in his ear, "Right, Ethan?" A flood of images flashed through Ethan's mind. After every beating, Landon would whisper the same thing. "Just some friendly hazing, right, Ethan?" He recoiled instinctively, shoving Landon away. Landon fell to the floor, his brow furrowed in a hurt expression. "Ethan, you still don't like me? I was just trying to be friendly." The faces of both women darkened. Victoria rushed to help Landon up, her gaze turning cold. Veronica frowned in disapproval. "Sis, your fiancé has quite a temper. He's not even part of the Devereaux family yet, and he's already this arrogant." Victoria shielded Landon behind her, her voice icy with anger. "Ethan, apologize." Ethan looked at the three of them, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. The memory of what he'd heard last night felt like someone was ripping his heart open. He turned silently, preparing to leave. He'd only taken 2 steps when his wrist was seized in a powerful grip that yanked him off balance. Ethan looked up into Victoria's furious eyes. "Who said you could leave?" Veronica's tone was frigid. "The Devereaux family values propriety above all else. Sis, your fiancé needs to be taught some manners." "You're right." Victoria's gaze was like ice. "Ethan, you're about to become a Devereaux. You need to watch your words and actions at all times. I want you to think about what you did today." With that, she dragged him forcibly to the basement and pushed him into one of the rooms. Before he could react, the door slammed shut. Not a single sliver of light penetrated the heavy, sealed door. Only then did Ethan realize it was a small, windowless room. In the pure darkness, his breathing became shallow and rapid. He pounded on the door in terror, but no matter how much he yelled, there was no response. He was consumed by an endless panic. In college, Landon had locked him in a dark closet for 3 days. No sound, no light. Time stretched into an eternity. He had a mental breakdown that time, and ever since he'd been terrified of the dark and suffered from claustrophobia. For years, he had to sleep with every light in the house on. Victoria had found it difficult at first, but after hearing his story, she had held him tenderly. "It's okay, it's all over now. From now on, our house will always be lit up at night. Don't be scared." At first, she couldn't sleep well, tossing and turning, waking easily. But every time he suggested they try turning off a lamp, she would refuse. "Ethan, you don't have to force yourself to do anything. I can adapt." She knew. They all knew. And yet, they chose this method to punish him, just because he had pushed Landon Sterling. A dull ache throbbed in his heart. Ethan curled up in a corner, wrapping his arms around his trembling, hyperventilating body. Of course, the warmth of the past was all an act, a performance they had deliberately staged. Even this small, dark room, it was probably tailor-made just for him. 2 days later, Victoria opened the door, a pleased smile on her face. "Landon isn't angry with you anymore about what happened. Get yourself cleaned up. We're going to try on our wedding tuxedos and pick out the rings." Ethan was taken to a high-end bridal boutique. The moment he stepped out of the car, he saw Landon and Veronica already waiting inside. Landon greeted him warmly. "Ethan, you're here. I didn't get to congratulate you properly last time. Tori and I are best friends, so let me help you pick out the perfect tux today." He was smiling, waiting to see Ethan lose his composure. But Ethan didn't show a trace of fear or disgust. Instead, he smiled back. "Thanks. I appreciate it." Landon's expression flickered for a second before his smile returned. He slung an arm around both Victoria and Veronica. "Then I'll try some on with you. You know, Ethan, I'll be a groom myself pretty soon." Ethan's smile was placid. "Congratulations." The light in Landon's eyes dimmed completely. From then on, every tuxedo that Ethan so much as glanced at, Landon would immediately call a staff member over and try it on first. Each time he emerged from the dressing room, he would take Victoria's hand. "Tori, what do you think? Do I look good?" And each time, Victoria would look at him, captivated, lavishing him with praise. Veronica would hover around Landon as well, the two of them completely ignoring Ethan. A staff member sighed wistfully. "This groom is so lucky." Only then did Landon turn to look at Ethan, who stood off to the side like an outsider. "Oh, I'm sorry, Ethan. You're the groom. You should be trying him on first." He then playfully tapped Victoria's forehead. "Tori, what's wrong with you? How could you neglect your own groom like that?" The staff looked embarrassed. Veronica's lips curled into a mocking smile. Victoria finally looked at Ethan. "See anything you like?" Ethan randomly picked one and went to try it on. When he came out, the three of them were gone. The staff member gave him a sympathetic look. "Sir, Mr. Sterling said they were going to look at rings, and the ladies went with him. As for you, it's fine." Ethan took off the tux, handed it back, and walked out. A little while later, Landon posted on Instagram. The photo was a matching pair of rings, encrusted with diamonds and a large gemstone. The rings Tori won at that Sotheby's auction. Ethan glanced at it once before locking his screen and continuing to pack. Aside from the clothes and necessities he was taking with him, he gathered all his other belongings, including the gifts he had once given Victoria, and threw them away. He didn't touch a single thing she had given him. Just as he zipped up his suitcase and put it in the closet, Victoria walked in, holding a blue velvet box. "This is the ring I bought for you at the auction." Ethan recognized it. It was the other half of the pair from Landon's Instagram post. He took it calmly and set it aside. His detached reaction made Victoria frown. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on the trash can, where she saw the matching couple's mugs he used to cherish. A flicker of unease crossed her mind. She raised an eyebrow. "Why'd you throw the mugs out? Are you angry?" Ethan pressed his lips together. "No." His denial only confirmed her suspicion. "Is it about the tuxedo fitting? Landon is just a good friend. We haven't seen each other in years, so I was paying a little more attention to him." She reached out and hugged him. "There's no need to be jealous of him. If there was anything between us, we would have gotten together a long time ago, don't you think? Ethan, you're my groom. You know how I feel about you, don't you?" Hearing those words, Ethan felt a sharp, violent pang in his heart. His eyes grew slightly red. Seeing this, Victoria kissed his chin. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm sorry you felt neglected." At her words, Ethan's fingertips trembled, then clenched into a fist, his nails digging deep into his palm. For a fleeting moment, he had the impulse to confront her, to demand to know what was real and what was fake, to ask if, in all their 3 years together, there had been even a single moment of genuine affection. But the words died on his lips. Victoria's phone rang. She answered it quickly. "Landon, I'll be right there." After hanging up, she squeezed his hand. "I have to go. You get some rest. You need to be the most handsome groom in a few days." With that, she turned and hurried away. Ethan sat on the bed, forcing back the sting in his eyes. 2 hours later, after showering, he lay in bed, about to fall asleep. In a drowsy haze, the bedroom door creaked open. Victoria, who was supposed to be at a party with Landon, walked in. She smelled of alcohol. She casually shrugged off her coat, wearing only a slip dress, and slid into bed next to him. The moment her skin touched his, Ethan was wide awake. He knew with chilling certainty. The person pressed against him was Veronica. Ethan's body went rigid, his face ashen. It took every ounce of his strength to shove the woman off him. Veronica frowned, studying him for a couple of seconds before raising an eyebrow. Still mad, she rubbed her temples, her mannerisms identical to Victoria's, her voice husky with alcohol. If he hadn't overheard Victoria's vow to remain chaste for Landon, he never would have been able to tell them apart. She moved closer again, her hands planted on either side of him, their noses almost touching. "I already explained things today. If I had feelings for him, I wouldn't be marrying you." Veronica leaned in to kiss him. Ethan's eyes widened, and he twisted his head away. The next second, Veronica suddenly bent over and gagged. She retched until her eyes were red, but she couldn't stop it. She bolted from the bed and ran to the bathroom. Ethan watched her go, the image of the pregnancy test flashing in his mind. He frowned and followed. Standing at the bathroom door, he heard a clamor of voices from Veronica's phone, which she'd apparently left on a call. One of her friends shouted, "Ronnie, you're not pregnant, are you? What if he won't let you go after the truth comes out?" Ethan's back went ramrod straight, a chill spreading through his limbs. He realized Veronica had been on a live call the entire time. Landon's voice followed immediately. "Tori, Ronnie, don't you think you're going too far?" "Too far." Victoria's tone was glacial. "After what he did to you, this is the punishment he deserves." Landon sounded worried. "But what if Ronnie's actually pregnant?" After a moment of silence, two female voices said in unison, "Impossible." On the other end of the line, Victoria's voice was exceptionally cruel. "Even if she is, it's just some bastard. We'll get it taken care of. Right, Ronnie?" Veronica bit her lower lip. Of course." For some reason, her heart gave a painful squeeze. The next moment, she saw Ethan open the bathroom door, his face pale as he stared at her. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly ended the call and went to him. "What's wrong, Ethan? Why do you look so pale? Are you not feeling well?" Ethan stared at her fixedly. "You're not pregnant, are you?" Veronica's heart pounded, and she forced a smile. "No, just an upset stomach." That night, Ethan found a confirmation for her abortion appointment on Veronica's phone. He lay awake until dawn. The next day, he went to the clinic where Veronica had her appointment. He watched as she was wheeled out of the operating room, then went to the doctor and obtained a copy of her procedure report and a photo of the embryo. Reading the words, 7 weeks gestation, fetus developing well, all indicators normal, stabbing pains shot through his heart, and his eyes reddened. It was noon by the time he left the hospital. Victoria's car was parked at the entrance. She got out quickly and ushered him into the passenger seat. "Come on, I'm taking you to lunch." The drive was silent. A smile never left Victoria's lips. The music playing in the car was a song Landon had loved in college, a song Ethan despised. When they arrived at the restaurant, Landon and Veronica were already waiting. Landon pointed to a cake on the table. "Ethan, I was out of line yesterday. I stood in line to get this cake from that famous bakery as an apology. You have to try it." Throughout the meal, Landon constantly brought up childhood memories of the three of them. "Tori and Ronnie loved following me around when we were kids. When we played house, they'd fight over who got to be my bride. One time, Tori climbed a tree and couldn't get down. I lay on the ground to be her cushion and got hurt, and she cried for ages. In middle school, I was kidnapped. Tori and Ronnie got seriously injured trying to save me and were in the hospital for a long time. After that, they studied martial arts for years to protect me." Victoria and Veronica would laugh and add details, the three of them chatting warmly while Ethan remained silent. Suddenly, Landon turned to him. "Ethan, why are you so quiet? Do you have a problem with me? I know we had some misunderstandings in college, but now that you're marrying Tori, I hope we can be the best of friends." Landon raised his wine glass, a smirk on his lips as he looked at Ethan. Ethan didn't move or look at him. Suddenly, he clutched at the fabric of his shirt, his breathing becoming ragged and labored. A terrifying red rash was spreading across his arm. He struggled to reach for his bag. "You're having an allergic reaction?" Victoria shot to her feet and reached for his bag. Ethan had a severe peanut allergy. Though he was usually careful, he always kept an EpiPen in his bag for emergencies. Ethan had just gotten his hands on the pen when Landon's weak voice cut through the air. "Tori, I don't feel so good." His fingers clutched his chest, his face turned pale, and he slumped backward in his chair. Landon, Veronica, sitting next to him, caught him just in time. "Sis, I think Landon's having a reaction." Victoria, who had been rushing towards Ethan, froze. She suddenly remembered Ethan had ordered the seafood bisque. Her face instantly darkened. She spun around and marched back to Ethan. He had already pulled up his pant leg, about to administer the injection. Suddenly, a powerful grip clamped down on his wrist, snatching the EpiPen from his hand. He looked up in disbelief, meeting Victoria's cold, hard eyes. "You did this to Landon. He gets the medicine first." Without another word, she strode over to Landon and, without a moment's hesitation, swiftly administered the injection. Sensing his stare, Veronica spoke coolly. "You're a doctor, Ethan. You must know other ways to handle this. Landon doesn't know anything. He needs the pen more." After the injection, Victoria helped Landon to his feet and rushed out. Veronica followed. "Sis, I'll get the car." Ethan lay paralyzed on the floor, his bloodshot eyes locked on their retreating backs. From start to finish, neither of them had looked back. As his consciousness faded, he saw a waiter rushing towards him. "Sir, what's wrong?" Ethan was unconscious for a day. When he woke up, Victoria was sitting by his bed. She took his hand, her voice filled with concern. "Ethan, you're finally awake. Are you feeling okay?" Ethan pulled his hand away and closed his eyes. Victoria wasn't angry. She gently brushed a stray strand of hair from his temple. "Ethan, I know you're mad at me, but the Devereaux and Sterling families have major business ties. I couldn't let anything happen to Landon in front of me. I had no choice. You're about to be a Devereaux. We're on the same team. You should understand." "Ethan, you know I love you the most, don't you?" Veronica appeared at the door. "That's right, Ethan. My sister had no choice. Big families have their own pressures. We have to think of the bigger picture. As family, we had to let you make the sacrifice." Under the blanket, Ethan's hand clenched violently. He stared at the two women, a cold sneer forming in his mind. They were really working hard to keep up the charade. Not wanting to engage, he closed his eyes again. "I need to rest." Only when he heard their footsteps fade away did Ethan open his eyes. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hello, is this the live streaming agency? I'd like to book a team for an event." After hanging up, he instinctively reached for the pendant in his chest, but his fingers met empty air. The pendant with his grandmother's hair and ashes was gone. Panic seized him. He shot up and searched around the hospital bed. Just as he was about to go ask a nurse, a text popped up on his phone. It was from Landon. He'd sent a photo of the pendant necklace. "If you want this back, come here now. Otherwise, I'm flushing its contents down the toilet." A wave of blinding rage made Ethan's vision go black. His chest heaved as he sprinted towards Landon's room. In the room, Landon stood by the window, the necklace dangling from his fingertips, swinging precariously outside the open window. "Landon, give me back my necklace." Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. A vicious smile played on Landon's lips. "Ethan, you saw all my Instagram posts, right? TSK, TSK. And here I thought you were so high and mighty. Weren't you wishing I was dead back in the day? Look at you now, willing to put up with anything to marry into the Devereaux family." Ethan's eyes were fixed on the necklace, the knuckles of his clenched fists turning white. "Give me back the necklace." Landon moved the necklace a few more inches out the window. "You want it? Then get on your knees, bow down to me, and admit that you're a worthless, pretentious piece of trash." "Never." Ethan trembled with fury. "Landon, don't push me too far." Landon laughed arrogantly. "Am I pushing you too far? Is this the first time you've realized that?" "Ethan, I hate that holier-than-thou act of yours. If you had just knelt down back then, I wouldn't have targeted you for years. You've seen how important I am to Tori and Ronnie. So here's the deal. You get on your knees and beg me, and not only will I give you the necklace back, I'll even help you secure your position in the Devereaux family." "I will not kneel." Ethan's fists were clenched as he advanced on Landon, step by step. "Landon, you couldn't break me before, and you won't break me now or ever. I will never bow to someone as vile as you." "You." Landon, insulted, laughed through his rage. "Fine. If you don't want the necklace, then let's just get rid of it." As he spoke, he tilted his fingers down, and the silver chain began to slide off. "Give it back." Ethan roared, lunging forward to grab it. But it was too late. The necklace fell from the 10th floor window right before his eyes. Ethan's eyes were so red they looked like they might bleed. He was about to turn and run downstairs when Landon grabbed his shirt. Landon's face twisted into a mask of terror as he pleaded. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'll stay away from Tori. I swear. Don't push me." At the same time, two furious voices shouted in unison from behind him. "Ethan, what are you doing?" A hand clamped down on Ethan's wrist, the grip so tight it felt like it would shatter the bone. The next second, he was flung backward, landing hard on his tailbone. Pain shot through him, his face went white, and a cold sweat broke out. Victoria and Veronica rushed to Landon's side, anxiously looking him over. "Landon, are you okay?" Landon looked wronged, but stoic. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Tarai, maybe we shouldn't see each other anymore." "What are you talking about?" Victoria wrapped her arm around him, her eyes filled with pain. "Don't worry, I won't let you be bullied." Then, she turned a furious gaze on Ethan. "Ethan, after all these years, you're still tormenting Landon." Ethan was in agony, his face pale and slick with sweat. His voice trembled. "I didn't. He threw my necklace out the window on purpose. Enough." Victoria cut him off, her eyes filled with deep disappointment. "Ethan, still making excuses. Landon has been gentle and kind to everyone since he was a child. How could he possibly bully anyone? But you were bullied by others, and you always take it out on him." Ethan's pupils contracted. He finally understood. "I didn't. He bullied me. He was the one who bullied me all along." Before he could finish, a sharp slap landed across his face. His right cheek went numb, and the taste of blood filled his mouth. Still no remorse. Victoria's sharp eyes blazed with anger and disgust. Ethan, if I don't teach you a lesson today, you'll be capable of anything. You try to push someone out a window today, what's next? Arson? Murder? With that, she and Veronica grabbed his wrists and began to drag him forcefully out of the room. What are you doing? A wave of inexplicable fear washed over Ethan. His face paled, and he started to struggle. But no one answered him. No matter how he fought, the two women just silently dragged him, their clenched jaws broadcasting their fury. With his last glance back into the room, he met Landon's triumphant and malicious gaze. Ethan was taken to a bungee-jumping platform at the top of a mountain. It was hundreds of feet high, with a sheer cliff face below. The moment Ethan stepped onto it, his face turned deathly white and his legs began to shake. Victoria and Veronica's expressions were still frigid. They took the safety harnesses from the staff and buckled them onto him themselves, forcibly leading him to the edge of the platform. Staring down into the abyss, Ethan's body went rigid. The only sound was the thunderous beating of his own heart. His voice trembled. Tori, you know I'm afraid of heights. I know. Victoria looked at him, her eyes devoid of any emotion. Since you're going to push Landon off a building, I'm going to let you feel the terror of falling. Ethan, this is the punishment you deserve. The Devereaux family will not tolerate someone with a malicious heart. Today is a lesson for you. If you correct your ways, our wedding will proceed as planned. Veronica's lips were pressed into a tight line, her gaze dark. Don't worry, you won't die. After they spoke, they pushed him. The intense feeling of weightlessness hit him. Ethan's heart stopped for a few seconds, a sharp pain radiating through his chest. In the grips of extreme terror, he couldn't even scream. Only broken sobs and involuntary tears were whipped away by the high-altitude winds. His eyes were filled with nothing but dead silence and despair. He was left dangling upside down over the cliff for half an hour. Just as he was struggling to breathe and on the verge of losing consciousness, they pulled him back up. He collapsed onto the platform, gasping for air to relieve the tingling numbness caused by oxygen deprivation. But the next second, a staff member approached him. Mr. Hayes, Miss Devereaux instructed that you must jump a total of 10 times before you can leave. Before Ethan could process this, he was pushed off again. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time, he was left hanging over the cliff for 30 minutes. The short breaks weren't enough to replenish the oxygen in his body. As his consciousness grew increasingly dim, the 10th punishment was finally over. The sky had turned completely dark. The harsh white lights on the platform were the only thing keeping Ethan's last thread of consciousness from snapping. Only one staff member remained. He unbuckled the safety harness from Ethan's body and turned to leave when a hand grabbed his pant leg. Take me to the hospital. The voice was as faint as a candle flame in the wind, using up the last of his strength. The staff member shook his head. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. Miss Devereaux said no one is allowed to help you. This resort belongs to the Devereaux family. I don't want to lose my job. The staff member left. The glare of the incandescent lights made his eyes ache. Tears streamed down Ethan's face. He rested for a while before forcing himself to crawl to his feet and start making his way down the mountain. He had walked halfway down before he encountered some tourists on their way back who gave him a ride into the city. He didn't go back to the villa. Instead, he went to the hospital and, using his phone's flashlight, began searching the lawn beneath Landon's hospital room window for his necklace. The branches of the shrubs scratched his skin, and mosquitoes bit him all over, but Ethan was oblivious, searching inch by inch. As time passed, he grew more and more agitated, a glimmer of tears in his bloodshot eyes. Suddenly, a voice barked from behind him. Who are you? What are you doing here? It was a hospital security guard. With the guard's help, he was able to speak to the groundskeeper responsible for the lawn. I did find a necklace, yes. I thought no one wanted it, so I threw it in the trash. Ethan pressed, which trash can? The groundskeeper shook his head. It's already been collected and taken to the landfill. If you want to find it now, I'm afraid you won't be able to. Tears instantly fell from Ethan's eyes. Which landfill? That necklace is very important to me. I have to find it. ####. Ethan spent a full day at the landfill. The moment he found the necklace, the tears he had been holding back finally fell. But in the next second, he discovered that the lock of hair and ashes that had been inside were gone. A roar filled his head. Ethan clutched the necklace and ran back to the hospital. Just as he reached the entrance, he ran into Landon, who was being discharged. Landon covered his nose theatrically and took a step back, looking at him with disgust. Where did this piece of trash crawl out from? Ethan stared at him, his eyes burning. What did you do with the contents of my pendant? Landon looked at the necklace in Ethan's hand and suddenly smiled. Oh, you mean that dirty stuff inside? I flushed it down the toilet a long time ago. Landon. Ethan was trembling with rage, his head buzzing, his bloodshot eyes filled with hatred. He lunged forward, grabbed Landon by the collar, and threw a punch with all his might. Landon staggered back, clutching his face, and was caught by Victoria, who was standing behind him. Ethan met Victoria's gaze, which was so cold it could kill. Ethan, you really are incorrigible. Ethan's eyes were blood red, his voice trembling. He flushed my grandmother's ashes down the toilet. Enough. Her expression grew even more disgusted. To hurt Landon, you'd even curse your own grandmother. Ethan, you make me sick. The next second, she grabbed his arm and shoved him violently backward. Screech. A speeding taxi couldn't brake in time. Its horn blared wildly, but it still slammed into Ethan. He was thrown through the air, landing in a flower bed. A sharp pain tore through his chest, and thick, dark blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He instinctively looked towards Victoria, only to see her protectively shielding Landon, her eyes full of concern as they got into a car driven by Veronica. From start to finish, she never once glanced in his direction. Ethan blacked out. He was in the hospital for 2 days. Through Landon's Instagram, he saw Victoria accompanying him to various parties and events. The wedding was just around the corner. She couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. Ethan was also preparing his own plan for the wedding day. The afternoon before the wedding, Victoria came to pick him up from the hospital. She brought his favorite flowers. I was too impulsive the other day. I'm here to apologize. But you need to stop targeting Landon. Tomorrow is our wedding. I have a surprise for you. Ethan looked at her quietly for a few seconds, then suddenly smiled. He took the flowers from her. Good. I have a surprise for you too. Victoria froze, a flicker of unease on her face that she quickly concealed. On the way back to the villa, the weather suddenly turned and a heavy rain began to fall. As thunder rolled, Victoria grew agitated. She drove with one hand, constantly trying to call Landon with the other. Over and over, the calls went unanswered. She suddenly slammed on the brakes, pulling the car over to the side of the road. She grabbed an umbrella from the passenger seat and handed it to Ethan. I have something to take care of. You can grab a cab from here. With that, she unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned over to open his door. Ethan didn't take the umbrella. He just gave her a long, deep look, then turned, got out of the car without a second thought, and closed the door. Victoria paused for a moment, looking at the umbrella in her hand, a strange feeling stirring within her. She opened her door, about to give the umbrella to Ethan, but Landon's call came through. His voice was laced with fear. Tori, I'm so scared. Please come. Victoria's expression changed. The hand on the door handle pulled back. She quickly started the car. Ethan stood on the sidewalk. Only then did he realize he had brought the flowers she gave him out of the car. Watching the taillights disappear into the distance, he placed the bouquet on top of a trash can and called an Uber. Back at the villa, he received a text from Victoria. It's bad luck to see each other the night before the wedding. I won't be back tonight. Ethan didn't reply. Perhaps because he'd been caught in the rain, Ethan developed a low fever that night. In his delirium, dreams came one after another. One moment, it was Landon and his friends beating him until he couldn't get up, their feet on his back as they humiliated him. The next, it was Victoria comforting him, cooking for him, watching movies with him. Then, it was their first night together and the countless intimate moments that followed. Tears slid from the corners of his eyes, but when he woke up, his gaze was as cold as ice. The morning of the wedding was also the 7th day since his grandmother's passing. As the sky began to lighten, he took his luggage and went to the cemetery. From there, he took a cab to the hospital to meet up with his group. On the way, he opened a group chat and confirmed the details and plans for the wedding with the people in it. Then he found a bookmarked live stream and clicked on it. On the screen, a beautiful influencer with a polished look greeted the camera. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, at the invitation of the groom, we are here to live stream a very special wedding. Ethan watched the phone screen, a cold light glinting in his dark eyes. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. At the wedding venue, Victoria stood in a simple, elegant wedding dress. Veronica and Landon were beside her as the maid of honor and best man. It was a modest outdoor wedding on a lawn, with guests who were all young people of their age. Everyone knew they were there to watch a show. When the live streaming crew arrived, Victoria was taken aback. She went over to ask who they were. Upon learning they had been hired by Ethan, she frowned. She intended to punish Ethan, but she had no plans to broadcast it to the world. If this went out live online, it would have a major impact on his future life and career. I'm sorry, But today's wedding is a private event. Please." Before she could finish, Landon walked over and patted her shoulder. "Tori, since Ethan hired them, we should respect his wishes." He stood between the two sisters and waved at the camera. "Hello, everyone. I'm the best man today, and a lifelong friend of the bride and maid of honor." The Devereaux sisters pursed their lips, but said nothing more. In front of the camera, Ethan watched this scene, a sarcastic smile touching his lips. It was time for the ceremony to start, but the groom was nowhere to be seen. Victoria dialed Ethan's number again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. She frowned and instructed her assistant, "Go to the hospital and check on his grandmother. See if he's there." She had deliberately not invited his grandmother, afraid the excitement would be too much for her. The cold, automated voicemail message kept playing, making her increasingly uneasy. Could he know something? Just then, voices erupted from the large screen behind the altar. "Sis, if Ethan ever found out I was the one pretending to be you in bed with him all this time, do you think he'd have a complete breakdown? Oh, I'm sure he'd never guess in a million years that his darling Victoria has an identical twin sister. Can you imagine the look on his face when he finds out he's been a plaything for his girlfriend's sister for 3 years? To punish him, to send him crashing down to hell at his happiest moment. My sister has worked very hard." The color drained from Victoria and Veronica's faces. Ethan knew. A wave of inexplicable panic washed over them. Before they could react, the image on the screen changed. In a school bathroom, Landon was directing a group of guys to strip Ethan's clothes, burning him with cigarettes, taking turns slapping him, and finally, shoving his head into a toilet. The venue fell silent, with only Ethan's pained cries echoing through the space. On the screen, Landon's handsome face was twisted with vicious arrogance. "Ethan Hayes, you dare steal my title of Campus King? If you don't get on your knees and bow down today, I'll make the next 4 years of your life a living hell." Victoria and Veronica stood frozen, the blood in their veins turning to ice. Then, one after another, scenes of Landon bullying Ethan flashed across the screen. It wasn't until the screen froze on Landon's malicious expression that the two sisters snapped out of it, turning stiffly to look at him. This man, he had been lying to them all along. Landon screamed like a madman. Turn it off. Turn it off now." Just then, the screen lit up again with bullying footage. This time, Landon was younger, and the victim was a different boy, still in his high school uniform. More and more videos popped up, playing simultaneously on the big screen. The venue was filled with Landon's frantic screams and the tortured cries from the videos. Landon charged towards the control booth. A man who had been acting as a security guard stepped in his way and knocked him to the ground with a solid punch. "It was you," the man roared. "You who drove my son to jump off a building, who destroyed my family, who forced us to move away." Suddenly, all the event staff, the caterers, the technicians, surged forward, pointing at Landon, shouting their accusations, and beating him. Every one of them was a victim or a victim's family member. Landon had driven more than one person to their death. But whether they pleaded for help online or went to the police, their cases were always quickly suppressed. His victims either died or begged for mercy until he was satisfied, at which point he would move on to his next target. And Ethan was the one he had tormented the longest. Ethan was the one Landon hated the most. The more Ethan refused to break, the more Landon wanted to destroy him. In the beginning, Ethan had also tried to expose him online, tried to report him to the police, but nothing worked. So he spent years gathering evidence of Landon bullying others. He spent a long time persuading these people to trust him, to give him their evidence, to stand with him. Even during the years Landon was abroad, he never gave up on his plan for revenge. From the moment he overheard their plot against him outside the club, he had planned to use this wedding, this live stream, to expose Landon's crimes to the world. Only with enough victims, only with enough public outrage, would the Sterling family be unable to bury it. The venue was deathly silent, except for the curses and blows from the victims' families. Landon screamed, "Help me! Tora, help me!" Victoria and Veronica stood with clenched fists, their bodies trembling, their eyes red. The person they had protected their whole lives, the childhood friend they saw as gentle and kind, was actually this kind of monster. And for him, they had set a trap for Ethan. They thought they were arbiters of justice, but they were just accomplices. Suddenly, the two sisters pushed through the crowd. When Landon saw them, he struggled, overjoyed. "Tori, Ronnie, save me." But the next second, he met their bloodshot eyes, filled with cold disgust. Victoria grabbed his collar, her trembling voice choked with rage and pain. "Landon, you've been lying to me. You deliberately provoked me into going after Ethan." thinking of all the years of deceit, thinking that Ethan already knew the truth, thinking of his look of disbelief and pain in the hospital room that day, which had finally turned to dead despair. She couldn't stop shaking, a terrifying panic rising within her. Veronica stood beside her, looking at Landon as if she wanted to kill him. Landon's eyes darted around frantically. I didn't. It was all that bastard Ethan. The videos are fake. Still lying. Victoria roared, shoving him backward. He scrambled to grab her. He started it. He was bullying me. I was just fighting back. Torai, you have to believe me. With a loud thud, Veronica kicked him squarely in the chest, sending him flying. The crowd swarmed him again, beating him. Police. Nobody move. Officers rushed in, taking Landon and the victims into custody for investigation, collecting all the evidence. Ethan was already at the airport. He closed the live stream and glanced at the news online. The internet had exploded. The story of the Sterling heir's history of bullying was the top trending topic. Victoria and Veronica's actions were also being torn apart. A faint smile touched his lips. He took an old burner phone from his bag and turned it on. He sent the photos of the abortion report and the embryo from his album to both Victoria and Veronica. Then, he removed the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed the phone into an airport trash can. Without a backward glance, he boarded the plane. As Landon was being led away, he passed by Victoria. He struggled, grabbing her sleeve. The next second, he met a pair of bloodshot eyes burning with hatred. He froze, and she violently shook him off. The venue fell quiet, leaving only the shell-shocked figures of Victoria and Veronica. The assistant returned from the hospital. Ma'am, Mr. Hayes isn't at the hospital. The nurses said his grandmother passed away a week ago. What? The two sisters stared at the assistant in disbelief. Impossible. If his grandmother died, why didn't he say anything? The assistant quickly explained, the time of death was last Friday at 11 p.m. I confirmed it. Last Friday, the night of their party at the club. Was it because he overheard their conversation that he never told her his grandmother had died? Victoria suddenly remembered that night at the airport, when Landon had taken her phone to check on her. She pulled out her phone, and sure enough, she found dozens of missed calls and deleted texts in her recently cleared history. Damn it! Victoria sprinted out of the venue, with Veronica close behind. They got in the car and sped towards the villa. No one was there. On the coffee table lay a USB drive, held down by a single sheet of paper. Victoria, my greatest regret is that I ever trusted you. The hand holding the paper trembled. Victoria's eyes instantly reddened. Veronica had already plugged the USB drive into a laptop and opened the folder. Inside was all the evidence of Landon's 3 years of bullying Ethan. Just then, both of their phones chimed. It was a message from Ethan containing the photos of the abortion report and the embryo. He said nothing, but he told them everything. He knew. A dead silence filled the air. The hands holding their phones were shaking. Victoria was consumed by jealousy and heartache, while Veronica's eyes were completely red. That was her child. She had hesitated, had felt the pain. She remembered his expression when he came out of the bathroom that night. Suddenly, Victoria slapped Veronica across the face, her voice a furious roar. I told you to be careful. Veronica, her eyes red, slapped her back just as hard. Victoria, you're the real monster here. They lunged at each other, fighting viciously, unleashing all their pent-up resentment. Only the fists landing on their own bodies could dull the guilt and remorse that threatened to swallow them whole. They fought until they were bruised and exhausted, collapsing onto the floor, gasping for breath. After a moment, Victoria scrambled to her feet. I have to find him. Veronica quickly followed. They drove to the hospital and went straight to Ethan's department. Everyone there had seen the news. The department head looked at them, his face cold with disgust. Ethan signed up for Doctors Without Borders. He left today. I don't know his specific location. Victoria and Veronica could hardly believe their ears. Doctors Without Borders? Veronica's heart hammered in her chest, an uncontrollable panic rising within her. That's too dangerous. Is he insane? Victoria's eyes were also red with urgency. She glanced at the department heads in different face and turned to leave, pulling out her phone to call her assistant. Find out what flight Ethan was on. I need to know where he went now. As soon as she hung up, a call came from home. Victoria, Veronica, you will get back here right now. Immediately. At the Devereaux estate, their parents and their older sister, Catherine, sat on the sofa, looking at Victoria and Veronica. The atmosphere was heavy. Their father slammed his hand on the table. Look at what you two have done. Devereaux Corp's stock has plummeted because of your foolishness. Have you forgotten everything you were taught? Who gave you permission to do such a thing? Catherine's eyes were filled with disappointment. Tori, Ronnie, you went too far. This has not only caused immense harm to that young man, but has also severely damaged the family corporate image. Public opinion online is a unified attack against the Devereaux name. If this isn't handled properly, it will tarnish our reputation for a very long time. Their father continued, the best course of action now is to apologize. A sincere apology until you get his forgiveness. At the same time, we must shift all the blame onto Landon Sterling. Catherine nodded. The Sterling family is in chaos right now. Landon won't escape this. She narrowed her eyes, looking dangerously at her two younger sisters. You two don't still have any feelings for Landon, do you? Victoria lifted her bloodshot eyes, her voice seething. Of course not. The thought that he's such a vicious person, that he played us for fools for so many years. I could kill him. Veronica agreed. We know we were wrong. We'll cooperate fully with the PR team. Good, Catherine nodded. The priority is to get that young man's forgiveness. It would be best if he would cooperate and issue a statement. Ethan Hayes, right? Where is he now? The living room fell silent. After a long pause, Victoria said dejectedly, he's gone. He joined Doctors Without Borders. We don't know his exact location. Oh, a flicker of interest appeared in Catherine's eyes. Interesting. To endure that much bullying for so long and still come back, and then to use your prank to strike back so quickly. He's impressive. Their mother, who had been silent until now, finally put down her teacup. Indeed, if you two can win his forgiveness, I will approve of him joining the Devereaux family. Victoria and Veronica exchanged a look, a flicker of hope in their eyes. All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves, their father interrupted. Even if he's not here, you still need to apologize. Today, you will work with the PR department to record an apology video and release a statement. Once this blows over and we've recovered the losses, I don't care if you want to chase after him. Their mother added, I have only one condition. You two sisters will not turn against each other for a man. 2 hours later, the official apology from the Devereaux Corporation was trending at #1. Victoria and Veronica appeared on camera, looking haggard, explaining that they had been deceived by Landon Sterling. On screen, Victoria's eyes were red-rimmed. Ethan, I am so sorry. In our 3 years together, I was genuinely moved by all your wonderful qualities. I even hesitated about whether to go through with the plan, but after Landon's constant complaints, I mistakenly believed him and decided to teach you a lesson at the wedding. Ethan, I truly know I was wrong. I know you don't want to see me right now, but I will find you, and I will personally beg for your forgiveness. Public opinion did not shift. The majority of netizens saw through the act and continued to lambaste the Devereaux sisters. In response, the Devereaux Corporation issued another statement, announcing a reduction in the sisters' shareholdings and revoking their rights to inherit the family business. ##### Late that night, in a private suite at the club, Victoria and Veronica were chugging alcohol. A sea of empty bottles already littered the table in front of them. The group of friends who had once helped them scheme sat around them, but the usually boisterous atmosphere was now dead silent. Tori, stop drinking. Ashley snatched the glass from Victoria's hand and then reached for Veronica's. This has already happened. Drinking won't solve anything. Yeah, the others chimed in. What are you two even drinking for? The family inheritance? Landon? Or Ethan? Tell us. We'll help you figure it out. At the mention of Ethan's name, the drunken sisters finally reacted. Ethan. Victoria picked up another glass, swirled the liquor inside, and downed it. Before Landon came back, her heart had belonged only to him. She had believed her feelings for Ethan were just an act, with no real emotion involved. As for his relationship with Veronica, she had always felt a strange discomfort, but had never delved deeper. Now, with Landon's true nature exposed, her guilt towards Ethan was accompanied by a simmering resentment for Veronica. If she hadn't slept with Ethan, gotten pregnant, and had an abortion, maybe things wouldn't have ended this way. She suddenly hurled her glass against the wall, then grabbed Veronica by the collar and slapped her hard. You bastard, Veronica. Who told you to touch him? Who gave you permission to touch him? He was mine. Fueled by alcohol, Victoria unleashed the jealousy and resentment that had been buried deep inside her. Did she love Ethan? She didn't know. All she knew was that after the truth came out, Ethan seemed more perfect, more precious. She was jealous of Veronica. She hated Veronica for hurting him, and she desperately wanted to see Ethan, to apologize to him face to face. The more she drank, the clearer the memories of the past 3 years with Ethan became, and the more her heart ached. She punched Veronica's face over and over, with no regard for her own sister. Veronica fought back, just as fiercely. Yours? Victoria. You were the one who said you only loved Landon. You were the one who handed him over to me. For the past 3 years, he was mine. What right do you have? If you hadn't hurt him, if you hadn't said the baby was a bastard that had to be gotten rid of, do you think I would have aborted my child so quickly? This all started with you. You're the liar. You're the one he hates the most. Veronica was frantic now, too. She remembered Ethan's pale face outside the bathroom that night, the dead look in his eyes, and a sharp pain shot through her heart. He must have heard them say the baby was a bastard, heard her say she would get rid of it. That's why he had gotten the abortion report. She had lied at the club last week. She was nowhere near sick of him. She just hadn't been able to see her own feelings for Ethan clearly. She thought he was a malicious person, so she hurt him again and again. But now she knew how wrong she had been. He must hate them both. He heard those ugly, disgusting words. He was hurt time and time again. He would never forgive them. The two sisters fought wildly, their eyes red with fury, ignoring their friend's attempts to separate them. Veronica, he loved me. He was going to marry me. Who the hell are you? Victoria, thinking of Veronica's relationship with Ethan, grabbed a bottle from the table and smashed it over Veronica's head. Crash! As the glass shattered, Veronica grabbed her own bottle and smashed it over Victoria's head. The room fell into a deathly silence. The next second, blood streamed down both of their faces, and they collapsed. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The next time they woke up, they were in the hospital. The first thing Victoria saw was Landon's red-rimmed eyes. Her face instantly darkened. What are you doing here? Landon's lips trembled, his eyes filled with sorrow. Victoria, what was that apology statement about? You said you always loved me. Victoria gave him a long, cold look and sneered. Landon, the person I loved, was a fake. An act you put on. It wasn't you, was it? So what? Landon grabbed her hand. If you like that version of me, I can be that person forever. Tori, I really know I was wrong. I won't do those things anymore. They bullied me first. I didn't lie to you. It was all their fault. Enough. Victoria yanked her hand away. Landon, even now, you don't recognize your own mistakes. In your mind, you've done nothing wrong. She looked at him seriously. We grew up together. I don't know when you became like this. Or maybe you were like this all along, just pretending. Landon, just looking at you now makes my blood run cold. Landon's expression shifted wildly. Tori, how can you say that to me? I'm the father of your child. You're pregnant. What did you say? Victoria's face turned ashen. Landon, when did we? She stopped abruptly, her mind flashing back to her trip to see him a month ago. She had gotten drunk, and when she woke up, they were in the same bed, her body feeling different. You remember, don't you? Landon pleaded with her. Tori, this is our child. Let's have a baby. Let's get married, okay? But Victoria just stared at him coldly and pulled her hand away. Landon, even if I'm carrying your child, it's just a bastard. I won't keep it. Victoria pulled out a stack of papers and threw them in his face. They were photos of him with various women. I've looked into your life abroad these past few years. Victoria's eyes were like ice. Landon, not only are you a bully, but your private life is a mess. What gave you the right to ask me to have your child? The Sterling family is finished. You think you can use this child to latch onto the Devereaux? Do you really think I'm that stupid? Landon looked at the evidence in his hands, his face turning deathly pale. He stood up abruptly, about to leave. But Veronica suddenly entered from the doorway, shoved him to the ground, and then dragged him by the neck to the window. Her eyes were bloodshot with rage. Landon, you were the one who flushed Ethan's grandmother's ashes down the toilet. You threw his necklace out the window and then framed him for pushing you. Landon's face turned purple as he clawed at her hands. How? How did you know? You bullied him for years, and you still wouldn't let him go. You wouldn't even leave his grandmother's ashes alone. How can your heart be so evil? Thinking of the punishment she had inflicted on Ethan because of Landon's lies, Veronica wanted to strangle him. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, a hand gripped Veronica's arm. It was Victoria. That's enough. Do you want to go to jail for him? Veronica gave her a reluctant look and shoved Landon away. Clang! Landon crashed into an four-pole. The metal bar slammed into his head, and blood began to flow. The pain made his eyes red and his vision blur. He looked pleadingly at the two women in the room. But Victoria and Veronica didn't move. They just watched him suffer, their expressions cold. In that moment, they both thought of the pain Ethan had endured. Landon, this is your karma. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Karma. Landon's vision was blurring from the pain. He looked at the two indifferent women, his bloodshot eyes filled with resentment and hatred. Huh? You're talking to me about karma? What about you two? Victoria, Veronica, you think you're any better? Coming up with a plan like that to deceive someone. You two will get what's coming to you too. Yes, I hurt Ethan. But compared to your deception and your casual cruelty, what I did was nothing. The pain made Landon's breathing unsteady, his voice tremble. But seeing the dark expressions on their faces, a sense of vindictive pleasure made him grit his teeth and continue. You are the ones who hurt him the most. It's hilarious, Victoria. That supposedly heartfelt confession in your apology video? It's a joke. He will never, ever forgive you. With that final sentence, he passed out. The room was silent. The two women clenched their fists, unable to suppress the panic rising in their hearts. Because they knew that Landon was right. It was the one thing they had been deliberately avoiding, the one thing they hadn't dared to mention. They looked at each other, and in each other's eyes, they saw only confusion and fear. Landon was taken away by medical staff for treatment. Since he was a minor when he had bullied someone to death, it was difficult to sentence him. Victoria and Veronica were not satisfied. They worked tirelessly and finally uncovered evidence that Landon had intentionally hit and killed someone with his car after he had turned 18, sending him to prison. Victoria had an abortion. She and Veronica checked out of the hospital and returned to the villa where Ethan had lived. The house was just as he had left it, but everything that belonged to Ethan was gone. His solo photos had been removed from the frames. Their couple photos had been cut in half with scissors, leaving only one person. The Lego set they had built together, the painting they had worked on, the potted plants on the balcony they had chosen together, all gone. In the closet, not a single piece of his clothing remained. The gifts he had given her were all gone, but the gifts they had given him were all left behind. It was his way of making a clean break, of completely severing ties. Victoria sank onto the sofa, the image of Ethan leaning against it, holding her in his arms, appearing before her eyes. She loved staying home, binge-watching shows after work. Sometimes, if Ethan got home early, he would cook for her, and, after dinner, they would pick a movie and cuddle on the sofa. She would munch on potato chips like a little hamster, occasionally popping one into Ethan's mouth. She did love him. In that moment, Victoria finally understood her true feelings. With Landon, she always had to plan things, to think of activities, to feel fulfilled. But with Ethan, she didn't have to think. She was relaxed, a deep, soulful relaxation. But by the time she realized it, it was too late. Victoria curled up on the sofa, hugging her knees, and let the tears fall freely. Veronica sat at the vanity, tracing the empty picture frame with her fingers. There used to be a photo there of Ethan in his pajamas, sitting by the bay window, reading a book. The morning light had been perfect that day, making him look almost divine. She had taken the picture, had it printed, and kept it on her vanity ever since. She loved that photo. Every time she sat there, she would gaze at it. Ethan was exceptionally handsome, a striking, unforgettable kind of handsome. She had always kept a secret. The first time Victoria went abroad to see Landon and asked her to pretend to be her and keep Ethan company, the moment she saw him, she had fallen for him hard. And that was when, during those few days Victoria was gone, she had slept with him. But that twisted beginning had trapped her feelings in a strange loop. Because he loved Victoria, in his eyes, she was just Victoria. So she desperately suppressed her own feelings. Every time Landon told her Ethan had bullied him, she would curse him in her mind, telling herself he was a vicious man, unworthy of her love. She had successfully deceived herself. If only she had faced her true feelings. If only she hadn't been swayed by Landon's provocations. If only she had stopped Victoria's plan. But there were no if-onlys. Tears fell onto the empty picture frame. She tried to wipe them away, but they kept coming. Ronnie, Victoria's voice came from behind her, dark and strained. When we find Ethan this time, let's compete for him fairly. Let the past be the past. Let's start over. Veronica was silent for a long time before she answered in a hoarse voice. Okay, start over. Fair competition. Just then, Victoria's phone rang. She answered, and her assistant's frantic voice came through. Ms. Devereaux, we have reason to believe. Mr. Hayes may have been killed. What did you say? Victoria's voice shot up. Her vision went black, and she had to grab the doorframe to steady herself. Veronica shot to her feet, knocking over the vanity stool. Her heart practically stopped. Veronica shot to her feet, knocking over the vanity stool. Her heart practically stopped. The assistant quickly explained. Our investigation shows Mr. Hayes is currently in the Abayai region. But we just received news that a group of doctors without borders who had just entered the conflict zone were killed. Among them were 2 Chinese men. Their identities haven't been fully confirmed, but the descriptions are a strong match. Impossible. Victoria's nails dug into the doorframe. She forced the words out through clenched teeth. He's fine. I'm going to find him now. Veronica swayed, but quickly pushed past Victoria and ran downstairs. Victoria hung up and followed, getting into the car Veronica was driving. Veronica drove like a madwoman, the veins on the back of her hands standing out as she gripped the steering wheel, her lips trembling. Victoria booked the earliest flight to South Sudan. They grabbed their passports and rushed to the airport. For the entire 16-hour flight, neither of them slept. Their bloodshot eyes were filled with endless terror and anxiety. The only thing keeping them going was the belief that they would find Ethan, a living Ethan. They refused to believe he could be dead. He was so strong, so brave. But it was an armed conflict zone. Could he really have survived? Damn it. Victoria slammed her fist on the armrest. It was all her fault. All of it. If she hadn't been so foolish as to believe Landon, if she hadn't taken so long to see her own heart, Ethan would never have left in such despair, would never have chosen to do something so dangerous. She was a monster. Veronica's hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles were white, her trembling lips pressed into a thin line as she stared out at the clouds. Dead or alive, she was bringing him back. In this state of near collapse, they endured the 16-hour flight. The moment they landed, they rushed to the border. They immediately contacted local aid organizations, donated a massive amount of supplies, with only one condition: that they be allowed to accompany the supply convoy into the conflict zone to look for him. Meanwhile, Ethan was in a field hospital performing surgery. A young boy with a leg blown off lay on the operating table, about to undergo an amputation. Dr. Hayes, we're out of anesthetic. We only have a small dose of sedative left. The boy was writhing on the table in agony. His older sister sat beside him, trying to comfort him. The girl's own arm was a mess of mangled flesh and blood. Her forearm was gone. She was next in line for surgery. Use it on him. Ethan quickly sterilized his instruments, his words clipped and fast. He leaned down, explained the situation to both of them, and instructed his surgical assistant and the girl to hold the boy down. Then, he began the surgery. The moment the surgical saw bit into bone and was pulled back, the boy's screams filled the air. He thrashed wildly, held down by sheer force. Blood spattered onto Ethan's temple and mask, but his hands remained steady, his breathing even. That day, he treated countless wounded, one after another, until late into the night, when all the work was done. His hands, when he finally stopped, were trembling slightly. He needed them, try to ease the pain from overuse. He ate a simple meal and then sat on the ground outside the hospital, looking up at the moon, lost in thought. He had been in the conflict zone for half a month. After the initial chaos and confusion, he had quickly adapted. Every day, he treated countless injuries, wounds from knives, stray bullets, explosions. Some died the moment they arrived at the hospital. Those who survived often had to face the loss of a limb. In just a week, he had witnessed families torn apart by death, lovers who refused to leave each other's side, and many more like the brother and sister from today. He had gone from initial grief to a kind of weary acceptance. Here, he had no time to think about the bullying, the deception, the cruelty of the past. He didn't even have time to turn on his phone to check the news from home. The pain that had once been bone deep now seemed insignificant in the face of so much death. To be alive with all your limbs intact, was a stroke of incredible luck. He pulled a ring from his pocket and examined it in the moonlight. He could hear Isaac Fisher's last words echoing in his ears. Ethan, if you make it back, please give this ring to the girl I love. Her name is Megan Clark. She's a teacher. In the moonlight, the diamond refracted a gentle glow, just like the light in Isaac's eyes when he spoke of his fiancée. Isaac had been here 6 months longer than him. A few days ago, he had been hit by a stray bullet in the chest while on a rescue mission. He couldn't be saved. The reason he had entrusted this to Ethan, a new friend he barely knew, was because the other doctors who had come with him were all dead. Ethan put the ring back in his pocket. He wasn't afraid. He had no one left to worry about. To die for his ideals would be a fine thing, but he still hoped to make it back alive. He wanted to give Isaac's ring to the woman he loved. The next day, the war sirens blared outside the hospital again. A civilian area had been bombed. The number of casualties was overwhelming, and they needed backup. Ethan immediately volunteered and went out with the medical team. Everywhere were rubble and the sounds of moaning. Those who could walk were fleeing, while only soldiers and medical personnel moved toward the chaos. Among them, a few flashes of olive green caught Ethan's eye. It was a peacekeeping force from home, also participating in the rescue. Ethan glanced at them once before focusing on treating the wounded. In the distance, gunshots rang out continuously, and shells occasionally fell from the sky. They had to be constantly vigilant while they worked. Suddenly, a shell landed not far from Ethan. He instinctively shielded the child he was treating. The next second, the force of the explosion threw him through the air. He rolled a couple of times on the ground. Luckily, he only had a few scrapes on his arm. The sound of gunfire intensified behind him. He lay on the ground, holding the child, planning to wait until the attack subsided. But the child's breathing was growing weaker. If he didn't stop the bleeding from the wound on his chest, it would be too late. Ethan gritted his teeth and got up, pulling out his first aid kit. He opened the child's shirt, but before he could apply pressure, a stray bullet flew towards him from the distance. In the nick of time, a figure sprinted towards him and tackled him to the ground. Ethan felt a searing pain on the side of his face as it was scraped against the sandy ground. He scrambled up, his first thought being the child he was trying to save. He was gone. Ethan's gaze darkened for a moment before he turned to thank his rescuer. The person who had saved him was part of the National Peacekeeping Force. The soldier was looking at him, and as their eyes met, they both froze. "It's you?" The person who had saved Ethan was the same woman in the Range Rover who had driven him to see his grandmother one last time. Even though it had been pouring rain and dark, she had rolled down her window to ask what was wrong. Out of gratitude, he had committed her face to memory, leaving all the cash in his wallet on her car seat when he left. "Hi, I'm Ava Chun." "Hi, I'm Ethan Hayes. Thank you for saving me. We met once before back home. You drove me to the hospital, remember?" Ava smiled. "I remember. I never thought we'd meet again." She remembered him. She had been on leave and had seen a man desperately trying to flag down a car. He had looked so wretched, so frantic, and on the verge of collapse. So she had given him a ride, not expecting him to leave a wad of cash behind. "Stay safe," she said quickly, then turned to continue her mission. Ethan also looked away and went back to treating the wounded. The next day, a tall man in the olive-green uniform of the peacekeeping force burst into the hospital. He was carrying a woman on his back, a trail of blood marking their path. Ethan was passing by. When he saw the woman's face, he rushed over. The injured person was Ava. He quickly led them to the surgical area, instructing the man to put Ava down. As he cut away her uniform with a pair of scissors, he asked, "What happened?" The man spoke rapidly. "Gunshot wound to the abdomen, knife wound to the chest." Ethan could see Ava's injuries clearly. A long, deep gash across her chest and a bloody hole in her abdomen. He needed a surgical assistant, but the hospital was short-staffed. He looked at the man who had brought Ava in. "You'll have to help me." He began arranging the surgical tray, then suddenly remembered. "We're out of anesthetic. No new supplies have come in yet." On the cot, Ava forced her eyes open and managed to say, "No anesthetic." "Right." Ethan wasn't surprised. This happened often here. He found a wooden stick and had Ava bite down on it to prevent her from biting her tongue. Then, he quickly went over the names of the surgical tools with the soldier and began the operation. As the scalpel cut into flesh, the woman on the table let out a muffled groan, but she remained still, not struggling. The man assisting him was also steady, handing him the correct instruments without fail. An hour later, he finished stitching the wound on Ava's chest. "I'll find a bed for you. You need to stay here and recover for a few days." He then turned and quickly left to attend to other patients, a new worry nagging at him. The hospital's resources were scarce, especially antibiotics. He didn't know if she would make it through the recovery. Here, many died from post-operative infections or lack of medical supplies. As he was working, a cheer erupted from the entrance. He vaguely heard that a convoy with medical supplies had arrived. Ethan rushed out. He needed those antibiotics. As he got closer, he saw a woman jump down from the back of a truck. Ethan only saw her back, but it looked familiar. Impossible. He dismissed the thought. What would she be doing here? But then, the woman turned, lifting another woman out of the truck. As she faced him, her features came into clear view. Ethan's eyes widened. He stood frozen in place. The two women were Victoria and Veronica Devereaux. Veronica held Victoria, her heart pounding with anxiety. They had waited outside the conflict zone for 72 hours, getting approvals and paperwork sorted before finally joining a convoy. After entering, they had traveled with the convoy, distributing supplies and searching for Ethan at every stop. But at only the second camp, they were attacked. Victoria was shot. With no way to treat her, their only option was to follow a medical supply truck to the nearest field hospital. On the way, Victoria had lost consciousness completely. Veronica rushed inside with Victoria in her arms, and in a fleeting glance, she saw Ethan in the crowd. His expression was as cold as snow, his eyes complex. Veronica stopped in her tracks, a wave of ecstatic joy washing over her. He wasn't dead. He was alive. The immense relief was quickly overshadowed by the current crisis. She walked towards Ethan, her eyes red, her voice hoarse. "Ethan, my sister's been shot." "Right." Ethan glanced at the unconscious Victoria. "Follow me." He led them to the surgical area and began operating on Victoria, with Veronica holding her steady. When he cut in to remove the bullet, Victoria, though unconscious, let out a moan and twitched. The surgery was successful. Ethan cleaned his tools and turned to leave. "Ethan," Veronica's voice called after him. He didn't slow down, continuing on with his work. He was busy, so busy that seeing Victoria and Veronica only sparked a momentary surprise. He had no extra time for sentimentality. Veronica stayed by Victoria's side, her eyes constantly searching for Ethan. Watching him move tirelessly among the patients, never stopping for a moment, she felt a mix of heartache and pride. And relief. She was relieved he was alive, that he was thriving, so resilient, not broken by what they had done to him. A fire burned within her, searing her heart. It was a mix of admiration, respect, love, regret, hate, and shame. She watched him from a distance, unwilling to blink. Ethan got the antibiotics and went to treat Ava first. She was strong. By the time he got to her, she was awake. She was still weak, but her spirits were good. As he administered the medicine, she thanked him. "Dr. Hayes, thank you for saving me." Ethan gave her the injection without looking up. "Don't mention it. It's my job." "Besides," he said, pulling out the needle and meeting her eyes, "you saved me twice. I haven't even paid you back." Ava paused for a second, then smiled. "Don't worry about it. Saving you last time was my job, too. And that ride back home was just on my way. You don't have to think about it." Ethan shook his head, his expression serious. "You made it possible for me to see my grandmother one last time. To me, that's no different from saving my life." He had thought about it later. If he hadn't made it in time, if his grandmother hadn't told him to live well, he might have completely broken down. He might have just given up, or finished his revenge and then given up. Besides, he had glanced at her route on the GPS that night. She wasn't going that way at all. She had made a detour just to take him. Ethan smiled slightly. "Miss Chun, when we get a chance, I'd like to buy you dinner." "Okay." Ava smiled back. "Don't call me Miss Chun. Call me Ava." "Ethan, my sister's awake." Veronica stood behind them, her expression complicated as she watched his interaction with the strange woman in the hospital bed. Ethan nodded at Ava, then turned and walked with Veronica to see Victoria. For her bed, Victoria had been watching Ethan the whole time. It had only been half a month since they'd last seen each other, but it felt like a lifetime, an eternity. The most important thing was that they were both still alive. Ethan met her red-rimmed eyes, his expression completely flat. No emotion, no disgust, no hatred. It was as if he felt nothing at all. Or perhaps, all his emotions were buried deep beneath a layer of ice. He checked her wound, gave her an injection of antibiotics, and recited post-op instructions in a professional, detached manner before turning to leave. "Ethan!" Victoria's hoarse, weak voice called after him. He didn't pause, just kept walking away. "Ethan!" Victoria's hoarse, weak voice called after him. He didn't pause, just kept walking away. Even though all three of them were in the same hospital, Victoria and Veronica couldn't find a single opportunity to speak with Ethan. After the first day's surgery and dressing change, whenever Veronica tried to find him, he would just have a nurse handle it. He was always busy, with one exception, the woman named Ava. He'd check on her wound every day and would even smile at her. Victoria and Veronica were consumed with jealousy, but they knew they had no right to say anything. A week later, Ava was discharged. Victoria could also walk around. Given the hospital's limited resources, they were supposed to leave, but they used their own resources to secure a place to stay. That night, after finishing his work, Ethan was sitting on the ground in front of the hospital, looking at the moon. It was his only moment of relaxation in the day. He instinctively reached for the pendant at his chest, but his fingers found nothing. The memory of his grandmother brought a wave of sadness over his calm mood. He had been raised by her. She wasn't educated or wealthy, but she had given him so much love. In elementary school, other kids would bully him for not having parents, and even the teachers would favor the children from two-parent homes. But every time he was bullied, his grandmother would find a way to stand up for him. "Ethan!" A slightly hoarse voice interrupted his thoughts. Victoria stood beside him. Ethan looked up, his reddened eyes as cold as ice. Victoria sat down in front of him. Ethan, we came to Abai specifically to find you. We owe you a formal apology." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry." Looking at the icy man before her, Victoria's heart ached. Her voice grew more urgent. "Ethan, we only found out at the wedding that Landon was the one who bullied you. We were both deceived by him. Victoria, a cold voice cut her off. Ethan's eyes were like frozen lakes. Victoria, a cold voice cut her off. Ethan's eyes were like frozen lakes. The night my grandmother passed away, she wanted to see you one last time. I thought to myself then, if you just showed up, if you let her pass peacefully, I could forgive everything. Where were you then? Where were you then? Victoria choked on her words, her hatred for Landon reaching its peak. Landon took my phone. He deleted your messages, and I never got your calls. Ethan, if I had known about your grandmother, I would have been there. No, you wouldn't have. You would have chosen Landon. Ethan looked at her, and that's why I will not forgive you. Victoria's face went deathly pale, her voice trembling. Ethan, don't do this to me. I have feelings for you. Those 3 years. It wasn't all an act. I really do love you. It was only after you left that I realized what was in my own heart. I just made a mistake. She stopped abruptly. The look in Ethan's eyes was one of pure, cutting scorn. She had never imagined that those eyes, once as bright as stars, could hold such a look. It was like having a bucket of ice water dumped over her head. Victoria was chilled to the bone, rendered completely speechless. Ethan said nothing, yet he said everything. His voice was cold. My rest time is precious. You're disturbing me. Victoria's throat felt like it was blocked with cotton, an aching lump preventing her from speaking. After a long moment, she managed to squeeze out a single word, sorry. Then she fled. After Victoria left, Veronica emerged from the shadows behind a tent and walked over to Ethan. Ethan, I'm sorry. Ethan, I'm sorry. Ethan looked up at her. I heard you. Please leave. No, you don't understand. Tears streamed from Veronica's red eyes. Ethan, you don't get it. I've always liked you. From the first moment I saw you, I liked you. But back then, you were already Victoria's boyfriend, and Ethan's expression darkened. So you pretended to be Victoria, slept with me, played with me, and hurt me? Is that what you call like? No. Veronica was at a loss for words. She bit her lip, unable to explain herself. There was no explanation. I was just. Her voice was so hoarse, it was almost unrecognizable. I was suppressing my own feelings. I was lying to myself. Every time we were together, I just kept thinking, who do you see when you look at me? She choked on her words. But Ethan let out a cold laugh. Veronica, every single time I thought you were Victoria, because in my eyes, there was only ever Victoria. Veronica, who are you? You're just my fiancé's sister who came back from studying abroad a week before my wedding, aren't you? Veronica's face turned white, her voice trembling. Ethan, get out. Ethan's voice was as cold as tempered steel. Take your pathetic apologies with you. I don't need them. Veronica left. Ethan didn't linger either, getting up and heading back to his quarters. That night, both Victoria and Veronica lay awake, devastated by Ethan's finality. For the first time, they felt that there was no chance of ever winning him back. Ethan's mood was briefly soured, but extreme exhaustion pulled him into sleep the moment his head hit the pillow. He had expected them to leave quickly, but to his surprise, they stayed and started helping out at the hospital. They carried supplies, moved patients, and comforted the injured, doing whatever they could. As long as they didn't bother him, Ethan paid them no mind. He focused solely on his work. He was either out on rescue missions or in the hospital treating patients. He grew thinner and tanner, but his eyes grew brighter. During this time, he ran into Ava a few more times. She would bring wounded comrades for treatment, and they would exchange a quick, hurried greeting before going their separate ways. 3 months later, he was injured on a rescue mission. Stray bullets hit his leg and abdomen. He couldn't stand, couldn't run. As the bomber planes drew closer, he thought it was over. At the last second, Victoria and Veronica sprinted towards him. They dragged him to a relatively safe area, just as a bomb hit where he had been lying. When he woke up, he was back at the hospital with Victoria and Veronica on either side of his bed. The intense pain in his leg and abdomen made him groan. The two women, who had been dozing, woke instantly. Ethan, are you okay? Ethan, are you okay? Ethan shook his head, pulled his hand away, and quickly fell back asleep. For the next 2 days, Ethan was mostly delirious with fever. In his brief moments of lucidity, he would see Victoria and Veronica's worried faces. Due to a shortage of medicine, they wanted to take him back home for treatment, but he refused. They then found a way to procure a new batch of medicine. On the 3rd day, Ethan's fever broke, and he was fully conscious. He formally thanked them. Thank you for saving me. I can take care of myself now. You can go. They both shook their heads. We came here for you. Ethan, please let us take care of you. We came here for you. Ethan, please let us take care of you. Ethan shook his head again. I can take care of myself. If you have nothing else to do, you can go home. He pressed his lips together. I don't need your care, and you don't need to stay here for me. No matter what you do, I will not forgive you. Victoria and Veronica's faces paled, a sharp pain twisting in their hearts. They said nothing, but their actions showed their determination to care for him. But Ethan continued to treat them like air. He dodged their attempts to help him walk, ignored the water they offered him, and refused the food they brought him. He would rather struggle to care for himself than accept any help from them. After countless rejections, Victoria and Veronica finally learned not to bother him. A week later, Ethan started participating in light duties. 2 weeks later, he was fully recovered and back to his usual workload. Victoria and Veronica still hadn't left, and Ethan's stance remained unchanged. No matter what they said or did, he wanted nothing more to do with them. 1 year later, a plane landed in New York City. A man with short hair, lean and handsome, strode out of the airport. He walked with purpose, his eyes exceptionally bright. It was Ethan. His 1-year contract with Doctors Without Borders was over. He was home. Not far behind him, Victoria and Veronica also emerged. They, too, had changed significantly over the past year. Having witnessed so much death and conviction, they had found their own direction and purpose. But the one thing that hadn't changed was their love for Ethan. Even though he had treated them like strangers for a whole year, more distant than a mere colleague, they had only grown to admire his character more, to love him more. Over the year, the Devereaux family had repeatedly urged them to come home, but they had insisted on staying by his side, clinging to a hopeless love. Ethan first checked into a hotel, then went straight to the cemetery to visit his grandmother's grave. He brought flowers, wine, and a lot of her favorite foods, and sat before her headstone, telling her about his year. "Grandma, I finally did what I always wanted to do. I'm doing really well now. My life feels full. Grandma, I have the courage to face any hardship now. I finally understand what you used to say, that all suffering is temporary. I will be happy, I promise. You can rest easy." Ethan stayed until evening before leaving the cemetery and taking a cab back to the hotel. The next day, following the address Isaac had given him, Ethan found his fiancée, Megan Clark. Megan was an elementary school teacher with a round, smiling face and a warm presence. When she heard Isaac's name, she froze for a moment, her eyes quickly welling up. She wasn't surprised by Isaac's death. He had been out of contact for a year. She had already processed most of the grief. But when she saw the diamond ring, the tears finally fell. Megan quickly wiped her eyes and took the ring with a trembling hand. Her voice was choked. "Actually, when he first told me he was joining Doctors Without Borders, I was against it. We had a huge fight, and I broke up with him. After he left, he never contacted me again. I never knew he had already gotten a ring." Her eyes filled with sorrow. Megan slipped the ring onto her ring finger. Ethan's lips thinned. "I'm sorry for your loss." Megan forced a smile and took the ring off. "I always knew this might happen. Thank you for bringing the news back. Now I don't have to wait for him anymore. I can go on the blind dates my family has been setting up." She turned and walked back into the school, but her retreating figure was filled with an endless sadness and solitude. Ethan watched until she was out of sight before turning to leave. He went to the hospital. When his department head saw him, his face broke into a relieved smile, his eyes slightly red. He clapped him on the shoulder. "It's good to have you back. Good to have you back. We've all been waiting for you. Take a week off, get some rest, then come back to work." As Ethan turned to leave, he saw that his colleagues were all gathered at the door, smiling brightly at him. A few of his closer friends, their eyes red, rushed forward and hugged him tightly. "Ethan, we were so worried about you." A warmth spread through Ethan's chest, and a genuine smile appeared on his face. He went back to the hotel, picked up his luggage, and went home. It was a small 2-bedroom apartment in an old building, the place his grandmother had lived for decades. He put his things in his old room and began to clean, working until evening. Then he drove to the supermarket. The house was empty of supplies. He bought a cart full of groceries, so much that he could barely see over the top as he carried them. He struggled towards the entrance of his building when a kid suddenly ran out and crashed into him. Everything in his arms went flying, and he lost his balance, stumbling forward. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. A warm hand grabbed his arm, pulling him back. The next second, he was looking into a pair of concerned eyes. "Are you okay?" The familiar voice snapped Ethan back to reality. A genuine smile lit up his face. "Ava, you're back too." In their year in Abai, he and Ava had run into each other at the hospital many times and had become friends. "Yeah," Ava's voice was smiling. "The peacekeeping mission was for a year. It's over now. I'll be stationed in New York permanently. What about you?" She knelt down to help him pick up the scattered groceries. "I'm starting back at Mount Sinai next week." Ethan gathered his things. Just as he was about to lift them, Ava took half the load. Let me help you carry these. Ethan didn't refuse. He led her to his car. After they put the groceries in the trunk, he invited her, let me buy you dinner. Ava didn't say no. They decided on hot pot. After a year of knowing each other, the dinner he had promised was finally happening. Their conversation started with a bye and flowed easily. As they talked more, the atmosphere between them grew more and more comfortable. It was a wonderful meal. Afterward, they went their separate ways. On the way home, a smile lingered on Ava's lips. And for Ethan, the feeling of loneliness in his heart seemed to have lessened. The next day, Ethan visited his old high school to see his former homeroom teacher. When he mentioned his work over the past year, the teacher looked surprised. I have a student who also just got back from above. He checked his watch. She was supposed to come see me today. She should be here any minute. Just as he finished speaking, a familiar voice came from his side. Mr. Davison, long time no see. Ethan turned and saw Ava standing not far away, the same look of surprise on her face. Their eyes met, and they both suddenly smiled. That day, they walked lap after lap around the school track. Ethan learned that Ava had been 2 years ahead of him, but they had never had the chance to meet in high school. After that day, they started talking more frequently, a comfortable, unspoken intimacy growing between them. 3 days later, Ethan returned to work at the hospital, and Ava's leave also ended. On his first day back, the nurse at the front desk came over, beaming, holding a large bouquet of roses. Dr. Hayes, someone sent you flowers. Ethan's first thought was of Ava, but when he took the card, his expression fell. It was from Victoria. Before he could say anything, another nurse came in with another bouquet. This time, it was from Veronica. He felt a surge of annoyance, his lips pressing into a thin line. Throw them away. For the rest of the week, Victoria and Veronica sent flowers to the hospital every day. They never appeared in person, but they made their presence known, and it was incredibly irritating. On his 27th birthday, as Ethan was leaving the hospital, Victoria and Veronica approached him, holding flowers and gifts. Ethan, happy birthday. Ethan's face instantly turned cold. He frowned at them. Victoria, Veronica, please stop sending me flowers. And stop harassing me. The smiles on their faces vanished, replaced by a deep sense of loss. Veronica spoke first. Ethan, can you just give me a chance to pursue you? Victoria added, Ethan, I want to start over with you. Ethan took a deep breath, anger flashing in his eyes. My position has not changed. If you two continue to harass me, I will. Before he could finish, a familiar, venomous voice cut through the crowd. You piece of trash. A kitchen knife suddenly swung towards Ethan from the left. Across from him, Victoria and Veronica's eyes widened in terror as they lunged towards him. Ethan! At the same time, Ava, who had just arrived at the hospital, pushed through the crowd and sprinted towards him. ####. Ethan reacted instantly. The moment he heard Landon's voice, he caught a flash of silver to his left. He stepped back and leaned away, dodging the knife. Landon missed on his first swing and immediately raised the knife for a second attack. That's when Veronica reached him. Just as the blade was coming down, she pulled Ethan behind her, shielding him with her own back. The knife sliced through the flesh of her back, and blood sprayed out. Victoria went for Landon. When he saw it was her, he swung at her without hesitation. Victoria, you deserve to die, too. He hated Ethan the most for exposing him and causing the downfall of the Sterling family. He hated Victoria second most for abandoning him and gathering evidence to send him to prison. This past year, the inmates who knew of his crimes had bullied him relentlessly. Everyone bullied him. He had lived in a waking nightmare. Thinking of his year in prison, Landon saw red. He slashed at Victoria's chest once, twice. As he raised the knife for a third time, his hand was seized in a powerful grip, and the knife was twisted from his grasp. The next second, he was slammed to the ground, his arms pinned behind his back. It was Ava. The crowd had already scattered. Medical staff rushed out with stretchers and carried Victoria and Veronica away. Neither of them had lost consciousness. As they were being lifted, their eyes were fixed on Ethan. They were searching for a flicker of softness in his eyes, a sign of pity, or even pain and concern. But there was nothing. Ethan was looking at Ava. He walked towards her without a backward glance. In that moment, both of their hearts felt like they had been ripped in two. The pain was unbearable. They finally realized that no matter what they did, no matter how much they tried to atone, Ethan would never come back. He would never forgive them. After a year, their last hope was finally extinguished. Ava handed Landon over to the police, then turned to Ethan, anxiously looking him over. Are you okay? I'm fine. Ethan shook his head. The next moment, his cool hand was enveloped by a warm one. Ava moved closer, wrapping her arm around his waist. She could feel his heart beating rapidly. She gently patted his back. "It's okay now. Ethan, I was so worried about you." Ethan froze for a second, a warmth spreading through his chest. Then, he lifted his arms and hugged her back. Ava went with him to the police station to give a statement. When she heard about his history of being bullied, her eyes reddened with sympathy. By the time they left the station, it was after 8 p.m. She took him to a trendy restaurant. The restaurant was empty, filled with flowers and balloons. A pianist in a formal gown was playing softly. When Ethan took it all in, his heart began to beat faster. After dinner, Ava took out a watch and formally confessed her feelings to him. "Ethan, I started developing feelings for you back in Abaya, and getting to know you these past few weeks has only confirmed that you're the partner I've been looking for." She bit her lip, a faint blush on her cheeks. "I like you a lot. Would you be my boyfriend, with the intention of marriage?" "Yes." Ethan smiled. He watched as Ava fastened the watch on his wrist, then took a small box from his own pocket. Inside was a bracelet. "Ava, I like you a lot, too. Would you be my girlfriend, with the intention of marriage?" "Yes." Ethan fastened the diamond-studded bracelet onto Ava's wrist. They looked at each other and smiled, the air around them sweet with unspoken promises. Ethan felt the lonely, empty space in his heart finally beginning to fill, new life growing where there had only been scars.